Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&As, so let's get to the first question. Alright, do you think bodybuilders who say things like use lightweight and focus on contraction, etc., are only saying this because their arms are full of synthol and gear and they can't train heavy? It's kind of a good question. I think that could be a component of it. I think some of it is tradition and what they've been taught by other bodybuilders and a bunch of other genetically gifted freaks who have freak genetics, who are also blasting tons of gear, do certain things. Others just follow suit and take it as gospel, and I think that's part of it. But back to the other point, you know what? When I was younger, I did mess a little bit with side injections with my gear. I've never used synthol or anything like that, but I can tell you right now, number one, yeah, it builds up scar tissue real fast. I still have scar tissue in my bicep from a tiny number of side injections years ago. And I can also tell you that, yeah, if you've been doing any side injections in a smaller muscle like your biceps or triceps or anything like that, it absolutely affects your training. It absolutely affects your training, and it does make it really difficult to train with any sort of intensity, meaning heavy weight on exercises that use those muscles. It becomes very difficult. So is that probably a factor? Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who says it isn't has never experienced it personally. I can tell you that it is very difficult if you've done that, or if you're currently doing that. Based on my own experience, and I wouldn't recommend it. Alright, next question. Hi Jason, I'm an intermediate lifter training 4 to 5 days a week. Main goals are size, strength, and results. I'm a big boxing fan and do 6 to 12 rounds of bag work after my training. I'm not going to fight at all, but I like the dynamics and it helps me keep some cardio and eat more. However, I feel like it's taxing on my elbows and shoulders. I have no problem with my lifts, but by the end of the week I feel those joints sore. And I am 100% sure it's from the bag work as I regulate my weight training and know my body. How can I program the boxing work in and prevent it from affecting my joints and lifting? All right, brother, this is just a case of inflammation. This is inflammation in your joints and connective tissue. Like with anything else, you're probably overdoing it. When it comes to things like even bag work, because there's an impact happening, you are putting an impact on your joints. And because you're weight training, you're probably reasonably strong. You probably got a fair amount of power behind those hits. That is causing inflammation on your joints. You need to back the volume down. Cut the bag work down. Maybe cut the amount of time you're doing it in half. Maybe do it one less day a week than you're doing, and see if that helps. Because again, when you have sore joints, sore connective tissue, that's never a good thing, always a bad sign. It's always a sign that you are either doing something wrong or that you are having some overuse issues. And in this case, it's overuse of those impacts. You need to back it down until your body adapts. But like with anything else, those things will adapt over time. But you have to gradually increase the workload. You have to gradually increase the stimulus and the trauma that you're inflicting on different parts of your body and different activities. If you don't, then what happens is pain and under recovery. That's the end result of being too quick in how fast you increase the workload you're doing on something. That's the end result every time. All right, next question. Any tips on how I can have more variety of lifts in my training without interfering too much with progression? I know it's not necessary and in some cases can even slow down progression, but I honestly simply enjoy having more variety. When I say more variety, I don't necessarily mean to do tons of isolation work and fluff, but rather having more variety of the main compound lifts. For example, other than bench press, I want to do floor press weighted dips, and other than the back squats, I want to do front squats, pause squats, and other than the conventional deadlift, I want to do stiff leg and snatch grip deadlifts. How can I have all these lifts in my training and still make it work? I'm an intermediate lifter. My progress is very slow at this point anyway, and I want to make things a little more fun. Like I said, I'm big on mastering lifts. I'm big on training minimalism, but you know what? If you want to do some variations of these exercises, do them. If it makes your training more enjoyable, it's not like there isn't some carryover. If you're doing the floor press in addition to the flat bench, it's not like it doesn't carry over. It's not like it doesn't hypertrophy your pecs and triceps and all of that. What I would say, again, if recovery is the issue and you're concerned with it slowing down progress because you're adapting to too many things, limit how often you do them. In other words, let's say you want to do dips and you want to do floor press. You don't have to do both every week. You could come in after you bench press and you could do either floor press or dips as a pure accessory exercise, meaning you're not even taking them to failure. You don't necessarily need to program them to any large extent like you do your primary lifts. Pick just one. You know what? If you want to have the variety, maybe you could do floor press for 3 weeks and then you could switch to dips for 3 weeks. Now, some people would say you could alternate them week to week. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you're going to use an accessory, I would go ahead and use an accessory for a full 3 weeks. Every single week, and then maybe rotate through them, and that'll give you the variety that you want, because again, some people get that exercise ADHD. I get it, and you want variations that are at least going to stimulate the same muscles and have some carry over to the main lifts. And like I was saying, there's nothing wrong with that. Pick one. You know, you don't have to do front squats and pause squats every week if you're already doing your normal squats. Throw in a few sets, throw in 3 sets of one of them for a 3-week block after your main exercise. Not really a big deal. I think that's the best way to go about it with what you're trying to do. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm currently doing your intermediate program, but I'm probably in between novice and intermediate as far as my weight being used. When I complete this program, should I keep going and restart the intermediate or look at your 5x5? I'm 48, in good shape, and haven't reached the landmarks 225, 315, and 405. Thanks in advance, brother. For those who don't know what he's talking about, I usually tell guys, run unless you have variations that cause you to have a problem, like you're really short, you know, or very, very small frame, which tends to go with being short oftentimes. Yeah, I expect guys to be benching 225, squatting 315, deadlifting 405, 4 reps by the end of that program. Here's the thing. Once you've gone to intermediate progression, yeah, it's going to go a little slower than novice progression. It's going to be slower than linear progression, but you're already doing it. And I would expect if you have already built somewhat of a base and you run over and do my intermediate program, you probably are going to be an intermediate by the time you run a full cycle of it anyways. It's probably going to finish out your due gains. You probably need to go ahead and stick with an intermediate program. There's no need to go back to a novice program after that. And if you don't want to run mine again, and like I said, it's you know, just a basic template. My intermediate program is nothing special. It is one of the most basic off-season templates you could possibly do. It's a very common training style. So if you get bored with that and you don't want to run it, there's plenty of other intermediate programs out there. You know, you got Bill Starr stuff, you got the Texas method. Any of those will produce just as good of results, right? They all work pretty well. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I've been doing the 3x5 novice cutting program for about 2 months now, and I believe I've kept my strength as well as muscle size, while of course losing fat. I was wondering what you think about eventually adding in intervals of cardio between each set during the rest times to enhance fat loss, and I'm not talking about only HIIT. All right, I'm not going to read this full question. You need to be resting between your sets. You need to be resting between your sets. Don't listen to any of these jackasses who tell you to do anything between sets on your exercises. It impedes your performance. You are lifting weights to gain strength and gain muscle mass. That's it. That is the only reason you lift weights as far as your training response goes. Your fat loss comes afterwards, the post-workout metabolic increase. Your fat loss comes from your cardio that you do afterwards. Doing cardio in between will interfere with the training response, and it will produce less muscle growth. Just like we have pretty solid evidence at this point that 3 minutes and even studies showing that 5-minute breaks produce better muscle gains than shorter breaks. Pretty strong evidence at this point. That's because you're resting between sets. Now, if you're doing other stuff between sets, that's the problem. You shouldn't be doing anything for 3 to 5 minutes between any sort of exercise, other than that exercise again in 3 to 5 minutes. I don't know how to make that any more clear. Yes, it will interfere with retaining muscle mass. It'll interfere with recomposition when you're trying to lose fat. Don't do it. All right, next question. Some of the starting strength guys think that wearing a belt during squats and deadlifts might decrease sport specificity, but that's okay because you're going to be practicing your sport outside of the gym anyways. Is this valid reasoning in your opinion? Oh, hell yeah, it's valid reasoning. I'm just going to be honest. Yes, belts have their place. Belts have their place. Particularly if you're going to compete in a sport that uses a belt, it makes sense to do a lot of your training with a belt. For any sort of sport that is a contact sport, I'll just flat out say it. And this is going to be an unpopular opinion. It is stupid to wear a belt when doing your compound lifts if you are going to compete in a contact sport. All right? And that's just how I feel about it. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Yes, it interferes with sport specificity because you're not going to have that belt on when you get hit in the guts. You have to learn to brace your core over and over and over under heavy loads without a belt. And if you can't do that, it's going to interfere with your sport's specificity in any sort of contact sport. Now, we could argue that for running and certain field sports, okay, fine, because your legs are going to possibly going to get stronger from the belt. We could argue about that a lot because you can lift more weight with a belt. That would be a valid argument. Any sport in which you're going to get hit in the guts or you need your core to be stupidly strong, I think you should do at least 80 to 90%, if not more, not all of it, completely beltless. And I think those guys have valid concerns there. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.